Today, we are talking to a dependency attorney who represents parents and special needs children. Join us today on Fostering the Future.
Welcome to the Fostering the Future podcast, a show about all things child welfare, dependency, adoption, and foster care. Here are your hosts, veterans in the world of child welfare, Jack and Kat.
We believe that every human has incredible and equal value regardless of what side of the courtroom we sit on. We hope that everyone feels welcome and accepted here on Fostering the Future.
Make sure you follow us on Facebook or Instagram as Fostering the Future Podcast, or check us out on our website at fosteringthefuturepodcast.org.
Hello, my name is Bowdre McAllister, and I'm so thankfully participating in the conversation today. Just wanted to let you know I'm talking in general terms. I am not giving legal advice. If you do need legal advice, please consult an attorney of your choice. Nothing in this iPod broadcast that's stated by me should be construed as any legal advice to any other person. Thank you.
This is Jack, and I'm here with Kat, and today we have a very special guest in the Fostering the Future studio. We have Bowdre McAllister, a parent attorney for dependency. And I have a very serious question to ask you. What is your favorite drink at Starbucks?
That would be a cafe latte with 2 raw sugars, but a close second is the iced green tea matcha.
We're both fans of the matcha, so
Matcha's real, yes.
Interestingly, when my 4-year-old was very little, probably too young to be drinking matcha, I would take him to Target and we would walk around and I would drink my iced matcha latte and he would steal most of it. You know, it's in the card, so he still steals my drinks when we go to Target. He has a service dog now, and the service dog is named Matcha because that was his favorite
wonderful.
drink when he was little. Yeah.
So, Bowdre, can you tell me what your current position is and what that entails?
I'm a parent attorney, and I serve in the Tampa Bay area circuits and dependency court and some in Central Florida. So I'm court appointed to represent parent in dependency cases. Usually it's when the Department of Children and Families takes either abused, neglected, or abandoned children allegedly into their custody. Mm-hmm. In every one of those cases, if a parent presents themselves to the court, they're entitled. If they can't afford an attorney, if they're indigent, they're entitled to a court-appointed attorney. If they're not found to be indigent, they can, of course, hire their own private attorney to represent them. But I represent parents in that. And the way the system works is that there is a thing called the Office of Regional Counsel. By state statute, if they don't have a conflict of interest, they take one of the parents in the case, if they can, if they don't have a conflict. For the second parent, and sometimes there's several dads in one case sometimes. Mm-hmm. Then if they have a conflict as to the second parent, and so then we're appointed usually to that second indigent parent.
So is that how you end up being in other areas?
Yes, we are contracted through the state Judicial Administrative Commission, and we have to apply for each different circuit to be on their conflict parent registry list, as well as their special needs attorney ad litem list. So there's a vetting process. So each separate circuit has to approve us first, and then we have to execute a compensation package through the JAC, that Judicial Administrative Commission.
Okay.
When you see a shelter hearing or, you know, a parent being assigned a new attorney, which I believe happens at shelter, is that correct?
That's correct. Usually at shelter.
So usually I just see, you know, there's attorneys that are in the courtroom and, you know, the judge will say, hey, so-and-so, can you take this case? And they'll say, sure. But obviously, there's a lot more that goes on behind that.
Yeah, it just seems, I keep thinking, when you were talking, I kept thinking, gosh, how do you organize your day? Like, there's a lot of pieces. And I didn't realize you would go out of county also. And then also sometimes you represent children too. It seems like there's so many pieces to make sure align.
There are. But it's good in that a lot of times you don't get too much work from one particular circuit. So you really, as far as I'm concerned, in that I want to specialize in this area pretty much all the time. So you need to be on at least 2-3 different circuits.
Sense.
And it's funny that you say that, Kat, because I remember one time I was so overwhelmed because I had 2 kids who had hearings like almost back to back. And one was on one side of the county and one was on the other. And it's like an 1.5-hour drive. And I was over there on the other side of the county and basically like ran to my car, raced across town to get to this next hearing, walk in, and there's the parent attorney that I had just seen on the other side of the county. And I'm like, oh my gosh, she has to do this too. And she's actually, you guys have a lot more to do than me just sitting there and observing. So, and I was so scattered to like try and make sure that I got to the next courthouse. So I didn't know that there was as much moving around as there clearly is.
And all of our judges are usually very generous. If we do, like say I've got a case in Newport Richey and Clearwater scheduled at the same time, they'll either delay one of those hearings or let us appear by phone. With the virtual hearings, it's been a blessing because I can have 3 laptops going.
For us too, trust me, like especially because one of the hardest things as a foster parent is going to court and figuring out who's going to watch your kid when you go to court, because they can't always go to court. Sometimes it's not appropriate for them to go to court. Right. And a lot of the times if you go to court with a small child, like that can be disturbing to the courtroom. And one particular judge that we had just spoke of is like, bring all the babies. Like, I don't care if they cry. It's fine. Don't stress. We'll have like the service dogs walk in and play with them. Like if I've had kids crying or something, she'll be like, she'll stop the hearing and be like, somebody bring some snacks for the kid and some books and toys. So most of the other judges that I've experienced, like if a baby starts fussing or whatever, like you get some stern looks and you're booking it. But
well, that's so interesting. When you said that this is what you wanted to specialize in, it really makes me wonder what brought you to foster care.
Just early in my career, I've been practicing over 34 years, but when I practiced in North Carolina, I got on that court-appointed list for parent attorneys then. It's just very fulfilling knowing that you are helping children and parents get the services that they need, seeing families reunited, or for parents who can't complete a case plan and are terminated, that they get adopted into their forever home, as well as dealing with the foster parents. I always try to thank them in my hearings. They're just such a blessing to these children, and we all appreciate that, everybody in the system. We've got all these people together who care about these children, and it's just very satisfying, just all around. So, and dealing with the other professionals too, who are, wonderful at getting these children where they need to be. So I really enjoyed it when I first started practicing, and continued to do that in North Carolina. Then I got busy with some bankruptcy work before I moved to Florida. So when I came down here and took the bar exam in early 2008, I really didn't want to have to open my own practice again, and just wanted to focus on court-appointed work, and got back into that immediately and have enjoyed it down here. So it's kind of I guess I'll retire maybe in 5 or 6 years. So it's been wonderful throughout the years. Really, it's just a very pleasurable practice. The stakeholders overall are good to work with, and anytime that you're dealing with helping children, I think it's satisfying. So
yeah.
Yeah, one of the
really
things that we've a lot of people on our podcast have said, and it's something I 100% believe to be true, is while the system may be broken, there's so many people that are so compassionate. This isn't easy work. This isn't,
very good.
This is not something that you can just roll through. Nobody's making a lot of money in this. If you're doing this and continuing to do this, you have a passion to help people. While the system may be broken, so many of the people involved are just give me so much hope.
Very definitely, and especially in the area in which we live.
What drove your decision to become an attorney?
Wanted to help people. My stepfather was an attorney for many years, and I grew up under him. I was kind of like the scout in To Kill a Mockingbird. I'd go down there and watch him try criminal cases, personal injury cases, and always worked, was a clerk in his law firm, and just saw that the ability to help people and be a hero every chance you get. That was his motto. it's a little disheartening, when you go to when I took the bar down here in early 2008, and then you have to go to a mandatory new Florida attorney thing. A lot of the attorneys, because they said, why did you want to become an attorney? And a lot of them, it wasn't to help people, to make money, different things, but, at least they were being honest. But I think you really, at your core, want to genuinely help people and be of assistance to them. That's very rewarding, especially within a family.
What kind of formal education was required of you to start working as attorney ad litem?
Well, of course, you have to have an undergraduate, 4-year undergraduate degree, and then have a law degree, and then you have to be licensed in the state of Florida to do that. What was great about the attorney ad litem program, which that just started, came into statute, about 7 years ago, and it was great to be in on the ground level for that. So anyway, you have to submit an application to the circuits that you want to serve as a special needs attorney ad litem. They're looking for involvement in the dependency system and other relevant education or background. And I've also had years of practicing in guardianship and guardian advocacy work. Guardian advocacy work involves a lot of children with special needs. So I had that background as well. So that was the general requirement going into that. So
can I just ask you, because this is something that I see asked so many times in foster parent groups on social media, is what qualifies a kid to receive an attorney ad litem? So we say it's a child with special needs, but I've seen such a spectrum of, like, a child who has ADHD receives an attorney ad litem, but then also children with severe medical needs has an attorney ad litem. What is it that would qualify a child? They need more advocacy in the courtroom.
What's great about that is any friend of the court or interested party who's appearing at the proceeding can always interrupt and ask the judge to consider appointing this child who has a criteria, under the statute to be appointed an attorney ad litem, a special needs attorney ad litem. Also, some of us serve as, if the child does not qualify under the statutory criteria for special needs attorney ad litem, some of us will volunteer pro bono like you said, with a child with extensive needs, even though they may not technically qualify to serve for those children.
That's
like, say, severe sexual abuse or something like that. But anyway, as far as them being qualified for an attorney ad litem, under the statute where the judge has authority to appoint an attorney ad litem, and that attorney ad litem will be paid for it. The special needs attorney ad litem under statute will be appointed when the child resides in a skilled nursing facility or is being considered for placement in a skilled nursing facility, or is prescribed psychotropic medication but declines assent to the psychotropic medication, has a diagnosis of a developmental disability under statute 393.063, or is being placed in a residential treatment center or being considered for placement in a residential treatment center, or is a victim of human trafficking. So those are the criteria for that child.
That's a lot broader than I realized.
Yeah.
What I see the most is the psychotropic medication, because there are very serious considerations and reviews of a child on psychotropic medication and a lot of the developmentally disabled children. And it's important, there again, when they're considered for that residential treatment center, what we used to call a SIP placement, an inpatient psychiatric placement. If the child is objecting to that, it's real important to have that attorney ad litem advocate for them and represent them in that hearing, because that's a very restrictive of their rights, of course, going inpatient in an involuntary program for a substantial period of time. Oh, and then on the psychotropic medication, as far as that assent goes, them being able to consent to the medications, from what I've seen, the judges consider if they're, say, under 12 or so, the court deems them not to be able to give informed consent to that medication, even if their parents and everybody else consent. So they'll go ahead and appoint an attorney ad litem. If they're like older teenagers and they're consenting to it and the parents are consenting, if their rights haven't been turning, they usually won't appoint attorney ad litem.
Okay, that makes sense.
So how do you get assigned to a parent?
The attorneys on the parent representation registry list. At shelter hearings, they usually will either have shelter duty 1 week out of a couple of months.
Does shelter duty mean you come to the shelter hearings?
Right. And we're the attorneys there to get appointed to the cases that the Office of Regional Conflict has.
So there's a schedule for the people in this pool to come accept shelter hearing appointments.
Yes.
Is that correct?
And to make a long story short, they're supposed to rotate. So like say in one county, we go usually 1 day a month for the shelter duty. In another circuit, we'll go once every 2 months and have shelter duty for a week. And then when parents are appointed, not during shelter, they usually have that registry list in front of them and they just they rotate down, to be fair to all the attorneys, to give them the appointment.
Now, when you are handed a case in these situations, do you have any of the background information, or is it just, this is the names, will you take the case?
All the courts are very good to go to either, hand us in person, fax, or email to us the shelter petition. So we have that information. We can find out before the hearing from the regional counsel attorney which parent they're going to be conflicting off on. So that gives us a chance to review the shelter petition, reach out to our client, talk with them, and see what their position is to the shelter. So they can either not object to the shelter or they can contest the probable cause to the shelter petition and have a brief shelter hearing.
When you're assigned a case, do you have the opportunity to turn it down if you're not comfortable representing the client?
If we're that uncomfortable and feel like we cannot fully advocate for this parent, we would have the chance to tell the judge, due to, a legal ethical conflict of interest, that we're declining appointment. And I think most of them would go ahead and grant our motion, not to take that case if we felt that strongly. But I think with the attorneys, with our training and all, and understanding that every client is entitled to, under the Constitution, the best advocate for them, even though this may not be a popular client or they may have allegedly done something terribly wrong, we understand they're entitled to the best representation that an attorney can give them. And knowing that, we go forward with that.
Of course.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, that's, for me, that's got to be the hardest part of the job sometimes. That's such an honorable thing to be able to look past something somebody did and look at them as a human and defend them. So it sounds like that doesn't happen very often based on the way that you answered that most of the time when a parent attorney is assigned a case, they take it.
Right, because we really understand they're entitled to due process and representation at every stage of the proceeding. I think as we talked about earlier, there may be a personality conflict, and that's when you see the attorneys withdrawing from representation as far as we call it irreconcilable differences.
I've only seen that happen once with one of my kids' parents. There was a new attorney almost every time because of the way in which this parent communicated and behaved around people. So let's say you have a client and they're about to reunify. For whatever reason, this kid is not going to be safe in this home. I think that's something sometimes that foster parents struggle with. Like if you see a kid's going home and you know that it's still unsafe, all these people are clearly aware that it's not safe, but it continues anyways. From your role, is there anything you can do, or you just keep fighting to get that reunification?
The short answer is I just keep fighting to get that reunification and just try to counsel my client, if I'm aware of the issue, of how to remedy that safety issue. And I work closely with them. Of course, I care about children as well. So if I feel like there is something that could be unsafe, I want to remedy that as well. In my attorney-client relationship with my client, usually those things are picked up on. We as the parent attorney, our job is to, seek reunification without any dishonest information provided to the court. Usually, if there are other concerns, the other parties, guardian ad litem, foster parents, therapists, which is why the court relies so heavily on these child therapists, they have a duty to look into that, and that is usually vetted out on that side of it.
Yeah. Okay. So it's not your role to be judging.
No, it's not my role, and it would be really against my role.
Yeah, but you would call the hotline if you suspected abuse or neglect. So,
of course, if we are still under a duty to disclose, child abuse.
Okay. What is your responsibility to the parent?
To be a good advocate for them. Sometimes I feel like a cheerleader with them, and I'm fine to do it. I've also been called a closet social worker because I love that aspect in working with them as being like a secondary social worker with them. Basically, in the cases, if the children are sheltered, after that, the CLS, the Children's Legal Services Attorney or state attorney, will be filing what's called a dependency petition against them, and they're arraigned on that. They can ask for a trial if they want to deny the petition allegations. Most of them enter a consent to work a case plan to try to get reunification with their children. Or if they lose at trial, then the judge will enter a court-ordered case plan. So as y'all probably know, the basis for children to be returned is that the conditions for return have been met and that the safety and welfare of the child is safeguarded if the child's returned. Also, the court is looking at, has this parent, substantially completed their case plan tasks, and have there been behavioral changes based on that? There are always issues with visitation as well, and they may feel like everybody's against them, and a lot of times we're dealing with substance abuse issues of parents, mental health, domestic violence, learning disabilities, even of the parents. Staying in contact with them and seeing if they have any barriers to treatment that we can help them with, barriers to visitation, if we can make that better. So a lot of it is going back to court and going through their specific case plan task, helping them get the referrals that they need, because with these case managers, they're having a lot of turnover, as you know, and sometimes it's very hard to get the funding or even the referrals from the court system. So just working on those issues. So that's pretty much it, to hopefully get them to reunification.
So you had mentioned that you sometimes are kind of like a social worker to the parents. What are the types of things that you're able to do?
A good bit of that is, if they drop out of one drug treatment program or fail some drug screens, they just feel hopeless, and they shouldn't. Relapse is part of addiction. So it's just a matter of picking themselves up, getting the judge, let's try a new provider. Maybe let's try a new form of treatment, Suboxone, maybe methadone. Let's do something like that. Let's get a referral to someone else you might have a better rapport with and may have a treatment program more tailored to your needs, or that can be of help to you. So just keeping them focused on moving forward, because I think they feel we're on their side. And sometimes when it's coming from the case manager or the guardian ad litem, they kind of feel like these people are against me. So encouragement from us may mean more than encouragement from the other party. So.
Yeah, I think that's true. I feel like about once a year I run across a case, or I have a case or someone that I work with, and I think, oh my gosh, this is going to be my career ender. Like something that's really hard to read and really hard to look at and really hard to deal with. But we just keep moving on. Have you had any situations like that? Have you had situations where it's hard to represent parents who've done really bad things to kids?
Yes, it can be hard for us. And it's just a matter of processing those things with the parents, because what that will usually mean is that if it's that bad, like let's say extreme unexplained physical injuries, that parent is probably looking at what's called an upfront expedited termination of parental rights. So dealing, those are very serious issues, or extreme sexual abuse by a parent. That parent is usually looking at an expedited termination of parental rights. Our job is just to process pros and cons with the parent. If they do want a trial, we have to be very sure to get the best experts we can. If we've got a good faith basis for a defense to those particular issues, we've got to get those experts lined up. And vet them to see if there is any defense. And that depends, of course, what our client tells us, what they're saying, what their version of the story is. And then we also need to counsel them. Usually the state attorney or Children's Legal Services attorney in a very serious case will take what's called a voluntary surrender of parental rights from a parent, and going through that option with them. And one of the good things about that is not an admission as to anything in a termination of parental rights petition. And if they are terminated that way, as opposed to the trial judge terminating them after trial, that will not be any future ground for termination of parental rights of a sibling or any other afterborn child. And a lot of times we're dealing with young parents, so that's something to consider. And then some of those parents may also have pending criminal charges as well. So that's a big decision with them. If, say, your dependency trial or termination of parental rights trial is heard before the criminal case is heard, they have their Fifth Amendment right not to testify. Do they want to testify? So there's just a host of issues we have to review with them.
One of the things I think that has surprised me the most is how rarely criminal charges are filed against parents who have their children removed for things that you would think criminal charges would be filed for. Is that something that you've also seen, or?
I agree with you 100%. It's just amazing that more criminal charges, and I know that side of it, they're very busy with everything, and maybe they think the dependency court can deal with that. But I have been so surprised. I was sitting in one shelter hearing, and I was representing another parent, and there was a new shelter came in with allegations against a natural father that he had sexually abused his daughter repeatedly for years. And what I was thinking to myself as a normal person, the parent showed up at the shelter hearing, and I was sitting there and I was like waiting for law enforcement to come in and arrest him right there. Mm-hmm. Didn't happen, didn't get an address for that parent. And after the shelter hearing, he just got up, left, and went back to wherever he was. And I was really surprised at that. Just all I can say is for caregivers and things like that to reach out to law enforcement. In these cases, and even when I represent wards, incapacitated folks in guardian advocacy and guardianship, and I'm reporting abuse to law enforcement, I've gotten the same thing. I've had severely neglected and abused elderly people or children in special needs in those guardian advocacy cases. And it's just my experience, I can't get much traction there at all either, which now I will say I have seen recently, just in my personal experience, that I have a few parents that have been charged criminally. So I don't know. That may be an upward trend. It may have been something that has been overlooked. So that trend may continue.
What has been your greatest win?
When I practiced dependency law for parents in North Carolina, I had a pretty high-profile case where I represented an African-American father who had been released from prison, seeking custody through dependency court of his daughter. Maybe she was 6 at that time. It was pretty much a small county. Anyway, in my view, he had finished all his case plan tasks, showed behavioral change, had a great bond, loving relationship with his daughter. And there was just really no reason not for him to be reunified. And I felt like he's not getting a fair shake. So we had to take it to trial. So we won, and case management and guardian ad litem got a thrashing from the judge. The judge went on. Everyone was in tears in the courtroom. The judge went on for 45 minutes with these unfounded accusations against him, one of which was, you must still be dealing drugs because he has a cell phone.
Oh, my gosh.
And so the judge got up and he said, I want everyone in this courtroom to know I have 2 cell phones.
And I'm not dealing drugs.
There was just a complete lack of evidence. And, this is a case we get into. This child had been in foster care for a pretty long time. The foster parents were very emotionally attached to the child, wanted to adopt the child. So they were just stretching everything they could think of to try to get this child not to be reunified. So when that happened and the paper came in, that was a real big case. So because the judge indicated in his findings that it's very interesting that the case management had not made reasonable efforts. It was racial discrimination, and they were motivated against him based on racial lines. So that was a real big case.
That's a really big win.
Yeah.
That's
yeah.
a really big one.
And you don't see that much because usually, they have a good faith basis to do things. And another thing recently that gave me a lot of pride was as a special needs attorney ad litem, I got to go testify for a teenage girl who had been a victim of human trafficking for years. And we got to confront the perpetrator and make an impact statement to the court, and to see that judge give him the maximum time. And there were also, it was a big syndicate. There were also many other girls involved in this human trafficking scheme. And we got to see that federal judge throw the book at him. That when I left and that judge had done that, I said, I can sleep well at night.
I mean, this federal judge just don't mess around.
Oh, this is very true.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting in that case because I was not totally aware of this, but they're pretty liberal restitution statutes for these victims of human trafficking. When a perpetrator gets federally convicted, you can even go after their assets and things. And this particular perpetrator had made millions of dollars off of
my goodness.
trafficking these young ladies. So I was able to file a restitution claim for my attorney ad litem.
That's amazing. That's amazing because that's definitely not something that you see.
Yeah.
In our line of work,
Yeah. So and that was something that I don't get to do every day. So that was very satisfying. And then, for me, it's very interesting with these parents because I'll get appointed and I will talk with them. And then I'm thinking in my head, there is no way that this person's going to be, I just don't see them getting reunited. I don't think that they have the discipline to get this stuff done, or something else is going on. And then I'll see someone else and I'll be like, this is going to be a slam dunk. This person's on the ball. I really think they're going to do everything in a timely manner. Mm-hmm. And things don't end up that way. Like I had and what's really sad about a lot of my parents, they're like, I want to get my child out of foster care because I grew up in foster care myself. So, I mean, they've already had that trauma as a child themselves. And it's just a cycle, that continues, which is very sad.
Yeah.
But another great victory was, and I've had two mothers, moderately low functioning, and had a lot of other issues. But, Buddy, they stepped up to the plate and they overcame that and they got all their stuff done and they had ways to cope. Like one of my low functioning parents kept everything in a journal, and she was the most organized thing I've ever seen.
Wow.
And when I met her, when I had my first consult with her, I was like, she is never going to make it. So it's surprising. It goes both ways. So it surprises you.
Yeah. So you told us about some of your greatest wins. Can you tell us about some of your worst days or one of your hardest days?
The hardest days as the attorney ad litem are when these teenagers are on the run and it's unsafe for them. You don't know where they are. It's very dangerous for them. And those are I think I'm speaking for the other attorney ad litems. Those are your sleepless days, sleepless nights, and you really worry about these children, especially the ones that are very susceptible to become again or become for the first time victims of human trafficking because you just don't know, and they're very vulnerable, can be exploited. It's really sad. So all you can do at that point is just ask for as many staffings as possible for the diligent search, be on the lookout where you think that they may be. It's just like you just have to do a lot of detective work, reach out to all of the law enforcement officers in the area where you think that they may be. Miami-Dade County, they have a whole section devoted to, children of human trafficking. So I always alert them when I think that they might be in the Miami area, which a lot of the victims of human trafficking end up there.
I'll tell you, I had a placement. I've never had a placement really run away from me. I have definitely had some placements that have tried to run. Maybe they hid in my front yard or right outside my front door, but I've never had one really run.
And as an attorney ad litem, we're different than the guardian ad litem. The guardian ad litem attorney in the case, they're for the best interest of the child. But as attorney ad litem, we also have to advocate for the express wishes of the child, even though it may not necessarily be in their best interest. So
interesting. So guardian ad litem is manifest best interest is guardian ad litem, but also they're supposed to advocate for what the child wants. But you guys are fully what the child wants. That's your focus. You're that voice for the child.
Exactly.
Who are the people you interact with the most? Obviously, the judge and the biological parents. Are there other parts of the equation that you have a lot of collaboration and involvement with?
Oh, yes. I would say equally with the Children's Legal Services or state attorney on the case. That would be the attorney for DCF. I deal a lot with them.
The assistant state attorney, right?
Right. The assistant state attorney assigned to the case with the guardian ad litem. As parent attorneys, I have to go through the guardian ad litem attorney. If I'm attorney ad litem, I can also collaborate with the guardian ad litem volunteers and case managers. And on the attorney ad litem cases, I collaborate, just a ton with my wonderful foster parents, because another thing I do as attorney ad litem is make sure that those children with those special needs are getting all the community resources that they're entitled to.
Good.
And of course, the foster parents, especially with the younger children, is the gateway to that. And they're just, feel like I've become very close and bonded with a lot of the foster parents in my attorney ad litem cases.
That's so nice to hear.
So, and I even had, and sometimes it's interesting when I represent a parent that, let's say I'm trying to get a change of custody, say over to a maternal grandparent. I had one set of foster parents that actually came to the hearing in support of the motion for change of placement from them over to a maternal grandmother. And we were just all in tears at the end of that, because it was unusual to have the foster parents come because they had observed the grandmother so much with the child. And so anyway, that was a heartwarming scene that you usually don't see. And then there are just so many wonderful foster parents, but I've seen this over the years. It doesn't happen that often. Of course, these foster parents, they get emotionally attached and bonded to these children. Then if they don't want to let them go and they want to adopt them, sometimes I have to make the argument that foster parent is just basically causing undue interference or sabotaging, what I call sabotaging the reunification, really without basis. And it's usually very transparent to the judges because they can see through that. If they see a foster parent that is a prospective adoptive placement, but it is sad to see, but that's a good problem to have. When I've got parents ready for reunification and I know that there's an alternative placement out there, those are usually good problems to have. Or when I have stakeholders presenting possible good placements for a child. But I have seen foster parents just heartbroken when the parents turn it around at the end and the judge reunifies. It's just sad. It's a sad situation.
In the situations where maybe the judge isn't necessarily seeing the interference of the foster parent, what could be done?
Well, that's where the parents' attorneys come in, and we have to present that and cross-examine and present witnesses that have been the boots on the grounds with the parents to say, this is an allegation, but we've got professional witnesses to say the opposite to what the foster parent. And then if the foster parent's the only one who's saying that without any corroboration, the judge is going to consider that. So the judges see it. And sometimes I think to myself, I really appreciate so much these foster parents, but just remember your license and your agreement when you go into it, just to know that this can happen. Because I'm sure it would be heartbreaking.
And foster parenting isn't about adopting. It's about reunifying and helping families get back together. And
right,
I think
that's the first priority.
Sometimes foster parents, listen, I love all of my kids. I sometimes especially love when they go home and when their parents fight hard for them. One of the things I always tell new foster parents when they're worried about what that sadness is going to feel like is that, unfortunately, many less kids reunify than you would think. And when they're able to reunify, we've got to celebrate those. And when people are able to make actual change in their life to make a safe home for their kids, gosh, the emotion of that and pride for that parent and excitement for that kid to be able to keep their family intact so far overrides any sadness that I feel for myself in the loss of that child, especially because if you have a good relationship with their biological parents, you can can still maintain a relationship. My girls that reunified 3 months ago, I mean, they were here for a couple days last week, and we had sleepover, and we get to see them all the time. They FaceTime me almost every day. I get a text message, and I have a very close relationship with them, and that is possible. And obviously, even as much as you can do as a foster parent, sometimes that's just not possible because of the position that the parents are in. Sometimes that they just they're not able, like, they're doing what they can do, and they're not able to recognize you as someone who could be a support, or maybe they feel threatened, or that you judge them. I think that's something that we hear a lot, is they feel like the foster parents are judging them, or that the partners are judging them. And I hope that's not ever the case, but certainly, I want them to get their kids back,
That's great. And we, as parent attorneys, we really appreciate that attitude. But I know it's tough. And a lot of them, it's that the parents are terminated, and those, we celebrate the adoptions after that happens. So
what are your interactions like with the other attorneys on the case? Like, if you have one parent and another attorney has the other parent, do you guys collaborate together, or do you communicate?
We do, and more so when they're together. And really, dependency court is supposed to be a remediation, rehabilitation court. But sometimes that crosses over into like a family court custody case. We just have so many issues in dependency court we don't have time for. Sometimes I end up in 2-3 day hearings. I represent one parent. The parents are no longer together, and I'm representing one parent against the other. And this is such an interesting facet of this in dependency court. A lot of times I'll be appointed to what's called a non-offending parent, who wasn't the basis for removal. They're in a different household, so they had nothing to do with why the child was removed. So I'll have that non-offending parent. They'll immediately get placement of the child. It'll be sheltered from the other parent. The non-offending parent gets placement, and say that can go on for 1, 2, 3 years. They've never done anything wrong. They usually will keep the child if the other parent never complies with their case plan or meets the conditions for return. But if the other parent, who may have, really pretty severe issues, if they complete all their case plan tasks and show the behavioral change and have an approved home study at that point, there's case law that says the judge is supposed to put the child back to the placement where it was before the shelter. So it's going to go back against that. It's going to go back with that offending parent. And it's so hard for my non-offending parents to understand that. This is the law. But the judge can also consider best interests as well. But pretty much they're bound. I just had a hearing on this. There was no controversy. I represented a non-offending parent, but the judge's hands were tied because guardian ad litem DCF said the child should go back with the mother. I explained this to my dad even before the hearing, and that's hard to understand. You stepped up to the plate. You've been there. You don't have any case plan tasks. You've never done anything wrong, but just explaining this is how the system works. So,
wow, that's got to be so hard.
That's not something that I ever knew. I only had one situation with a non-offending parent, and I was so proud of this guy. He had never had a kid before. His child was born to this woman, and she had a new boyfriend, and there were some situations in the house that led to this child's removal. He came to me, really young, very young.
Little.
Yeah, like a few months old. And this dad stepped up to the plate in a way that I have rarely seen in dependency. Before his arraignment, he had completed all of his case plan.
Wow.
So he was on the ball, and he has a job, he has a house. The mother of his child was not allowing him to have the child because she had a new boyfriend and she wanted to be with him with the baby. When the child was removed from her, I had this baby for I've never seen a case go this quick. What was it, like 2 or 3 months? And he was home with his dad. He was a non-offending party. He wasn't anywhere near the situation when it happened. He reached out to case management and was like, I will do anything for my son. You tell me what I need to do and I will do it ASAP. They told him the classes that he would likely be assigned when he got his case plan. He had them all, everything was done before he even got a case plan. He sent all the paperwork before they even asked for it. His son is still with him. So I'm assuming the mother just didn't finish the case plan. But we had discussed earlier when sometimes parents have criminal charges, and obviously that doesn't happen a lot, but when that does happen, is there any collaboration between you, if you're the parent attorney, and their attorney that they're assigned in a criminal trial?
Oh, no, we actually do collaborate with them often. With their public defenders or their private criminal defense attorney. Of course, we can really help each other out because a lot of times the defenses may overlap or be the same in both cases, and talking about testifying in one action versus the other and how that can affect the other, because if they testify in one of those, that's probably going to be used in the other proceeding if it goes to trial. So yeah, there's a lot of collaboration.
Okay, so what are some basic things that biological parents can do to work better with you so that you can be more effective as their attorney?
Just to CC me on everything that they're doing, as well as the case manager. Even though, like, say, they're on their case plan task, they technically only have to provide it to the case manager. But sometimes they'll do that and they don't let us know that they've done that. So just to keep us up to date with communication and documentation of things that they're doing or lack thereof. So we'll know we need to help them get the referrals to do this or get an updated referral or a new referral. Just if they can have better communication with us. We are busy, but really the more they bother me and the more I bother them, the better chances there is of reunification.
Yeah, and I will add to that a lot of the times their case managers will change, and sometimes without any of us knowing. So if they're only sending things to their case manager and not copying you in, they might send something and then you get to court and the judge is saying, oh, I don't have this, and the case manager doesn't have it accessible, or it was sent to a previous case manager. But if you have it, and then you can always.
Yeah, with that turnover, they're losing things or things are getting lost in their system. If I receive it and I file it with the court, it's there, no question. That's the end of it. We know they've done it. We've got it all. And the more I file in the case, that'll take those possible issues out of it. So. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting that you say the more they bother you, because I do have one parent and that I have a very close relationship with, and she's always she feels like the first attorney that she had doesn't like her because she called her too much. And to be fair,
I totally believe that she would say that.
To be fair, when she started, she was using addict, and I know that at that time her behaviors were very different than they are now. The way that she handled things were very different from how they are now, as you can imagine. When things weren't going her way, she would get mad and she would just call people. So the first attorney she has, she stopped taking her calls, basically. And the only time she would ever see her or talk to her was in court. So she feels like her behavior when she was still using affected her relationship with her attorney in that way. And now she has a new attorney. And while her behavior is different, and she's like, I don't want to have the same situation I had with the previous attorney where he doesn't like me because I call too much. But this is kind of an urgent situation that we need to get addressed. And I need to make sure also that he's aware of it.
Well, I know who you're talking about, and it's very much like her to be like that, considerate and think of other people in that way. And so that's why I was saying I totally can see her doing that.
Oh, and I don't want to, they never bother me, and maybe I shouldn't have used that term, but yeah, I mean, some of the parents can call you excessively, and it depends on too where they are in their substance abuse treatment. And I know that in dealing with these people, I know what's going on. So I know that may be a result of, or while they're going through some of those issues.
Yeah.
And then, a lot of the clients don't have, boundaries. Thank you. Only a therapist can say that. Anyway, yeah, they have no boundaries, some of them, or it's hard for them to deal with those. If I feel like they're just calling me too much about not important thing, I can, try to say, unless it's really an emergency or important, and I'll take the call or the text at any time. Just try to limit it to maybe a couple of times a week or once a week to have a conversation with them. And I like them having my cell phone and being able to text me and the email. I know a lot of attorneys are like, no way you're ever going to give. Well, because of my special needs kids too, I want them to be able to get a hold of me at any time, and my parents too, because I love it, because I can get a text or email, and if I'm in another hearing, I can just respond. without having to interrupt that and get on the call, that sort of thing. If I'm in court or doing a virtual hearing. So
I will say that I think that that's pretty extraordinary compared to the experiences that I've seen with most of my kids' parents.
Yeah, and some are very good and very pointed and just say, and you can just answer with a yes or no. And that's all they really wanted to know that particular day. So I find it great. I find it really helpful.
Texts are a beautiful thing.
They are.
Especially for someone like you who's in the courtroom so much, and case managers a lot of the time too, when they're in courtroom all day, they can't take phone calls. And it's not, it's so easy for somebody to just get a concise little message to their phone and be able to respond at your availability, rather than feeling like, because someone's on the phone right now, I have to address this right now.
Right. And the ones that I feel like abuse the texting, I just tell them I'm not going to receive any more texts from them if it's counterproductive, and they can email me or talk to me on the phone. So,
what have you seen to be the biggest challenges in your interactions with parents?
I'm the type of attorney, I tell them this, I've been practicing too many years. I want to be honest with them. I tell them like it is. And a lot of times they don't like to hear that. And I don't sugarcoat things maybe as well as I should. Sometimes they don't like that, or they take offense to that. And they possibly want to blame everybody else. And I'm trying to empower them. But I just I don't have a rapport, and I've just got a personality conflict with them. That's the hardest thing to deal. And if they become accusatory to me in a threatening way, I, under the bar rules, have to withdraw.
Right.
So but I don't find that happens very often. Maybe 1 out of 50 cases, 1 out of 60, I have that kind of situation. Or if, say, they're one of the I don't know if y'all are familiar with sovereign citizenship, sovereign citizens.
Yes.
And I can't, under the bar rules, make those arguments for them in court. So, I had to withdraw from a case, and the parent ended up representing themselves. But I've got to have a good faith basis to make arguments, and just sometimes there's situations like that just don't work out well. And I just really have a get real conversation with them.
But I think that's important, and many of them probably don't have someone in their life to do that for them.
Right.
And even though that might seem like you're coming at them in a negative way, you're actually like you're almost parenting them for all these parents who haven't been parented.
That's
and
true.
They need that.
That's true. And it works with a lot of them, that what I call tough love type situation, and parenting them to get them to where they need to be. And then there's some parents that just want to blame everybody else, including their attorney. So those, and it doesn't happen that much. So that's about the worst part of my job.
In my experience as a foster parent, what I have found is that the parents who are going to be successful, and sometimes they're going to get reunified anyways, but the parents that are going to have successful reunifications are the ones that take ownership of what they did wrong.
Yes.
So most parents will come in right off the bat saying, they took my kids, I didn't do anything wrong, and then start to recognize what it was they did to put them in this situation. But the ones that I have had reunified that are successful are the ones where the parents are like, this was my doing, I've got to fix it. I created circumstances where my kids weren't safe, and I can't blame anybody but myself. And those are the ones that I find to be really successful. The ones that are constantly, even if it's like not in the direct issue that we're discussing, are constantly looking to put the ownership of the mistakes on someone else. Those are the ones where the kids are either just in care for years and years and years, or they end up being terminated. Have you seen that?
Yes, you hit the nail on the head. It's the accountability, responsibility, a true understanding and reflection on what got them to that place. That makes a huge difference in my reunification, and the successful ongoing long-term ones have been part of that. Yeah. That's been a big part of it. So, and a lot of times it depends on their rapport with their case manager and other family member support, even the support, like you said, of the foster parent sometimes, if they're supporting them. And
I think that's an important role for us as foster parents when we're able to, because we're with their kid all the time. And when we're able to have a good relationship with them, like I feel like it really can be a positive thing for everybody. Can you give me one word that you think people would use to describe a parent attorney in dependency?
I would say the underdog advocate. I know that's 2 words, but the underdog.
I like that.
Because we're representing like a lot of times the most unpopular party in the case. And sometimes if it's a really bad situation, I'll be talking to other stakeholders. And it's funny because they will associate me with that parent's actions. So I was going to say villain because sometimes we are vilified, but it's just psychological in that I kind of feel like we're the bad guy as well, and any arguments we make aren't with merit because we're representing the bad person in this case. If that makes any sense. Dynamic. So we have a negative connotation a lot of times,
like a criminal defense attorney,
just like a criminal defense attorney.
That's so interesting.
I feel bad for the parent attorney a lot of times when I'm in the courtroom, and I think that's why, because I feel like they're having to fight for something that that they're not responsible for. And also sometimes I'm in a courtroom and I see the parent attorney and I think, oh my gosh, this is so hard to defend this situation. And like sometimes you can just even see it on the face, like the look of the coming defeat that they're about to receive. I've had situations where they're like, I've reached out to them this many times. I've never met them before. Yes, they've been arrested again. And, like to have to like stand before a judge and be held accountable for things that were not your actions. I don't know. I feel sympathy sometimes for the parent attorney. Like obviously that's your job, and it's what you've chosen to do is to be that voice for these people in this situation. But I think when you said underdog advocate, that really rang true for me, because that's kind of how I've most of the time viewed. And sometimes, like, I will say that there are some cases where I'm like, oh man, that parent attorney is ripping everyone a new one. Like they are owning this courtroom, and maybe they shouldn't be, because like maybe this a parent should be held accountable a little more. But what do you see in the big picture of child welfare? What is the role of the parent attorney?
To advocate for the parents for reunification, or to keep children in their placement with the parents. And a lot of people lose sight of Chapter 39. The whole intent and purpose and background behind it is the goal should be for all parents, as long as they're not terminated and offered a case plan, to reunify the family, to reunify parents with children. And I know I was talking to some other attorneys, and they have, in some of the circuits, they'll have an adoption celebration day. And we often feel like in some of the circuits, they're having reunification celebration days as well. We need to celebrate that as well. So
what would surprise most people to learn about your role?
A lot of things can be resolved with a soft landing, and that can be in the best interest of the children as well. So that doesn't happen always. We're in trial a good bit, or we have contested hearings a lot, but we can get a lot done through other methods.
What do you want foster parents to know about parent attorneys?
We have constitutionally taken an oath to represent these parents in their positions to the best of our abilities. If they will please keep that in mind. They may have a totally different viewpoint than us, and arguments that we constitutionally have to make in court for our clients. And that's just our role. That's just what we do. So please don't take offense to it. And I think underlying all of that, and I would be speaking for every parent attorney I know, they certainly appreciate the foster parents in the system, the fact that we need more licensed foster parents, therapeutic foster parents, and we appreciate so much of what y'all do, because you are certainly not doing it for the money. So that these children have a safe place to land.
What do you want biological parents to know about parent attorneys?
We are there for them. We are not, being paid by anyone else. I mean, we're not in a conspiracy with anybody else against them. We are there for them, and we'll do the best that we can. And if you're going to have a parent attorney, appointed to you, you're going to know they're familiar with the system, because dependency court is a very specialized court system. So you know that attorney is familiar with the judges, what's going on, and the different stakeholders in the case usually, and they're going to provide good representation to the parents. And if they go out and hire a private attorney, please hire an attorney who has a lot of experience in dependency court, because they are just like fish out of water or a deer in headlights.
What do you want the public to know about parent attorneys in dependency?
That we are paid very little. We're very dedicated to our job.
What keeps you from being burnt out?
Yes, I need respite. I try not to answer my phone or take messages over the weekends if I don't have to. And I think we all need another life to do something in addition. And mine is, well, my children are basically grown now. I also work antique shows, antique dolls. I'm involved in doll clubs in the area. I've been very involved, do all the local shows, even the region, even at the national shows.
Oh, wow.
And do that research and history. And that's my respite.
That's really fun.
That's my fun little side business.
What is that? Is it Antique Roadshow? Is that the show on TV? Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Do you like that?
Yes, I love it.
I've seen that, and that's been like super interesting. Like just learning about the history of stuff sometimes.
Yes.
I find very interesting. That's cool.
Yeah.
All of us who interact with these kids and these parents experience secondary trauma, right? When you hear their stories, just by knowing some of the stuff that's going on, you're going to receive some of that trauma into your heart as well. What are the things that you do when you start feeling that the secondary trauma is getting to you?
I will take a break from it, go to an antique mall, maybe do some shopping for my side business, things like that, and just really appreciate my home life for what it is. I think a lot of us as parent attorneys are like, we just don't know how, we think all of our lives are dysfunctional, but how much just to be appreciative and have gratitude of what our families have given us and the opportunities that we've had.
So many situations could put us on the other side of the table in the courtroom, where we were born into a certain family, we experienced certain trauma, made bad choices at a time where our brains weren't fully developed to make certain choices, just because there's a parent that's a parent and I'm the foster parent. Like, I could very easily be in that position had I lived a different life. And it's important to remember that, I think, sometimes, and just be thankful that wasn't our experience and that's not our life right now, and try and help them that isn't their experience in the future. What do you think the biggest struggles you face in this child welfare world?
You touched on it. You need to keep a balance in your life. It's very easy to get burned out, and to find that balance in doing a good, effective job for your client, and being able to de-stress and have time for yourself as well. When you're a young attorney, it's very interesting. You spend exorbitant amounts of time, and it may not be real effective time in working on your cases. As you get to be an older attorney, as you practice more years, you know how to, with less time, more effectively present the motions, present the petitions, present the arguments to the court more effectively and with less time. So involved, and maybe less stress, more pinpointed, effective representation as you get older. So.
What do you think the community can do to prevent kids from coming into care, or prevent as many kids coming into care?
Just to volunteer for charities or other organizations to try to get these people the community service, things that they need before the kids get removed and get into care. And so whatever they can do, I know the departments are really good about, trying to not remove the children, keeping them in care with the safety plan, and making the referrals for the community service providers. But any way you can affect people that are parents with small children that are susceptible to removal or right on the brink of it is a blessing. If you can work for, like, there are many Catholic charities around in the Tampa Bay area that have been able to provide, housing or housing assistance for them, job assistance. And we talk about it all the time in dependency court. It is the affordable housing crisis in the Tampa Bay area is a struggle. And some of the judges are really considering that, how hard it is, especially during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all the caseworkers sometimes can give them is, referral for public assistance housing, for public housing or Section 8, and that's about it.
And sometimes those wait lists are
But the wait list are
really
years,
long.
and they're like, I'm not going to do this.
How am I'm supposed to have stable housing for my kid, and I need to accomplish that within a year. I mean, supposedly.
Right.
But, the wait list is a year and a half to get a house, and I've got to establish a house and continue. So
it's just a very big challenge to all of us, and especially a living wage too. And so, thank goodness the judges are considering those factors.
That's good. That's good. What are your personal goals to make change in the community?
Oh, I guess number one, as a parent attorney, for children to achieve permanency back with their parents and or extended family, if possible. And then as an attorney ad litem, to make sure all these children, their voices are heard on their express wishes, what they specifically want, and that they receive permanency and all the public and all the community service benefits that they're entitled to.
Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
So
I'm
much.
totally honored to do this, and I appreciate y'all's time.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe and follow us on social. We hope that you join us again next time and keep on fostering the future.